again at last. The circle is now complete.
What's the world coming to?
Well, you got a problem with what I did, Anthony?
No. Hey, no.
Fucking rat anyways. Whole family's all rats. Would have grew up to be a rat.
Stupid bastard. I can't fucking believe it.
Gee, I'm real sorry your mom blew up, Ricky.
Now you're gonna dig the fucking thing. You're gonna dig the hole. You're gonna do it. I got no fucking line. You're gonna do it.
Yes, I'll take the fucking hole. I don't give a fuck.
I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was pure and simply evil.
Jesus Christ. Mister, you okay in there?
Bunch of Indian coffees around here someplace.
Have you any idea what the cost of your actions is? What their effect might be? Or you to give them hope? What do you give them? We give them happiness. And they give us authority. Groovy.
Welcome everybody, it's July 14th, 2017. This is Chris coming to you live from the library on behalf of Cinephellas.com, the only place for all your cinephilic needs. Hello everybody, this is Jim. Now I know that this is not what you were expecting, but I needed to say a few words to you. Let me be clear, this is that Jim, President Donald Trump's imaginary, good friend. You've heard the Donald refer to me as a very substantial guy. And let me assure you, he was not exaggerating. Yet none of you seem to believe that I actually exist. That being the case, my friends, I thought I'd hijack the Cinephellas Podcast and tell you a little bit about how we met. It's a delicious story, my friends. It's simply delicious. And I think you're gonna love every second of it, and when I'm finished, you're gonna know there's nothing more real than your old friend Jim. Now, Mr. Trump and I have been the closest of comrades for approximately 30 years now. You've probably heard him talking about how much I love Paris. Oh, sweet Jesus, I love those baguettes. Well, you see, back in 1984, I was standing in line for a premiere screening of Paris, Texas. You know, the Wim Wenders movie starring Harry Dean Stanton. So I was in line for a special screening of Paris, Texas in New York City, like I was saying, when all of a sudden, I hear this raving maniac complaining about false advertising. It was my soon-to-be compadre, the Donald. He was upset when he found out that the film wasn't about Paris, France. It seems, my friends, that he ignored the pesky little detail of the word Texas right there in the title. Reading is a powerful tool, my friends. Long story short, my heart went out to the guy. So I walked out of the screening and I found Mr. Trump's limousine parked up on 42nd Street. And I'll be damned if he didn't let me right inside, because the Donald, he's got a big heart. He's one of the most substantial guys I ever met. And after slicing our fingers with a cufflink and becoming blood brothers, the two of us hatched a plan to buy up the real estate on which that movie theater sat. We put that sumbitch out of business and put up a boutique specializing in gloves for men with tiny hands. But since my family is deeply, deeply offended by any and all hand ornamentation, I agreed to be a silent partner in the business. We signed a contract that Mr. Trump would never give away my surname or follow me on Twitter. Because, my friends, when you're rich and famous like we were back in 1984, you had insider information that about 30 or some odd years later, we would have a form of communication in 140 characters. And that, my friends, was Twitter. That's right, we knew about Twitter years before you did. When Mr. Trump became president, we both agreed it was just too damn risky for him and I to communicate any longer. An open relationship with me would be even more politically dangerous than ties to our good friend, Mr. Vladimir Putin. I will say, though, I do look better without a shirt when I'm riding my horse. Months went by after the November 2016 election, and I just watched Donald Bigley winning from afar. It felt so good to see my friend winning so bigly. Then one night in April, a quiet, stormy night, the candles were lit, the wind was blowing, there was a soft rain echoing on my windowsill. I got a little ping in my inbox, and it was my good friend the Donald sending me a link to Cinephellas.com. And with that one simple gesture, I knew he would never forget our friendship and our shared love for misleading cinema. You know, my friends, Mr. Trump and I will always have Paris. Well, that's all. I'm gonna hand the podcast back over to Chris, but next time you hear Mr. Trump giving me a shout out, remember that I exist just as much as you, Paul Ryan, and the Easter Bunny. Oh, and also, think of me each and every time you visit Cinephellas.com, because, my friends, I'll certainly be thinking of you.
Well, that was interesting. Thank you, Jim, for that beautiful lullaby of a story. I hope everyone goes out and plays it for their children tonight when they're putting them to bed. But moving on today's episode of the Cinephellas Podcast, we have the very inspirational Mathieu Ratthe. That's Ratthe. A wonderful Canadian filmmaker who is going to be talking with me about his first feature length called The Gracefield Incident. So Mathieu is a Canadian filmmaker, as I said, who's done several shorts in the past, so definitely check out his IMDb page for that. But this film, he wrote it, he directed it, he produced it, and he stars in it. So he does a little bit of everything, and it co-stars the wonderful, multi-talented, beautiful Kimberly LaFerrari. You know, my French is not that great. I did take it for 4 years in high school, but hey, we had a terrible teacher. I'm not going to say his name, so unfortunately I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the French there. But this film, The Gracefield Incident, it got me thinking a lot about what I'm afraid of. So the film centers on this married couple and their 4 friends that go away for a weekend in the woods, and they start experiencing unexplained phenomena, and that's kind of just where the story begins. There's so many layers to this, which you don't really get in many horror films. You'll hear Matthew and I talk a little bit about that, but we don't want to give too much away because we definitely want you to check out this film. But yeah, as I said, it got me thinking about what I'm afraid of, and I think I'm most afraid of the unknown, right? So, for instance, I have a lot of tattoos, and I can sit in a chair for a long time. I got my back done once. I sat for like 3 hours straight, needling up on my spine. Of course it was unpleasant. Of course it hurt. But hey, I just went with it. I did what I had to do. That kind of pain doesn't really bother me as much, and I'm not afraid of needles. Sure, I get anxious because, of course, you're having this sharp, painful thing jabbed into your body, but I don't get scared. What scares me is the unknown. I am scared sometimes of the future, right? If I hear a loud noise, or when I was little, for instance, I was very afraid of the dark. Like many of us were, right? So it wasn't just me. They even made a show about it. Nickelodeon. Check out the 90s. But I say all this because I think that's something the Gracefield Incident does really well. Oftentimes with horror films, as much as I love Freddy Krueger, as much as I love Jason Voorhees, as much as I love Chucky, the recognition of the threat is the first step in facing the fear. But when you can't see the threat and you don't know what's terrorizing you, that's a whole nother ballgame. So, I want you to check out my conversation with Matthew. We talk about his transition from shorts into his first feature length. We talk about the essence of problem solving and how that influences his art and how it led to a major innovative way of telling the story in the Gracefield Incident. And we also talk about how the logistics of independent filmmaking work. So I hope you will enjoy my conversation with Matthew, and I'll see you on the other side. Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you? It's Erica.
I'm good. Nice to hear from you.
Good to hear from you. I have Matthew, director of the Gracefield Incident, on the line when you're ready.
Okay, great. Put him through whenever you're set.
Cool. And we have 15 minutes.
All right, great.
Okay, Matthew, you're on with Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Matthew, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm good. Are you calling from Canada today?
Yeah, I am actually. Montreal. Where you at?
Oh, that's great. I'm right now. I live in LA, but right now I'm visiting family in New Jersey, so I'm not too far away from you.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, is it humid on your down south? It's humid as hell here.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Montreal.
yeah. This is the first day where it's raining, so it's a little cooler, but it's been unbearable the past few days. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been kind of terrible here. So, So good. So hey, Chris. So did you have the chance to watch the film? Did you have the chance to check it out? Or?
I did, and I'm very excited about it. So since we only have a few minutes, do you mind if I jump right in with the questions?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, great. I'm really excited to talk to you about it. So the first thing that in doing research, this is your first feature, correct?
It is actually. It is.
Great.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear a little bit from you about the process, because obviously making shorts before this is it's like a different ball game. So how did your process change in making your first feature?
I mean, it didn't really change much, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I shot short filming. I shot the Gracefield in 13 days. So it was a really short and quick shoot, which what we use, the camera handle technique, in one point of view. There was really budget restriction and schedule restriction, but I've been shooting since I'm 10 years old, and on the July 29, pretty much date to date, when the movie's coming out, is going to be my 25th year anniversary where I shot my first short film. So I got about 27 short film, and I got some short film actually that was longer, took longer to shoot than my actual feature, which is kind of funny. But so yeah, I mean, preparation was the same. Crew was a little bigger. I had an unbelievable crew, and my DP had been working on with. since 25 years, was on my side as usual. So the process was not, I would say the process was different because of the technicality of it. I'm used to really set up all my camera and doing all my preparation, and this one was really, I had a preparation, but because of that point of view, and the camera was on my shoulder, and I had to act at the same time I was operating the camera, and I was directing the full crew and speaking French, speaking English to all of them, reading my lines and missing my lines, and and not having the right shot, and that was a thing. That process was completely different for me, and that was I would say the challenge for this film. Mm-hmm. But as the process normal, it's just the preparation. It wasn't really different.
So with all that experience that you have, it must have been relatively, I wouldn't say easy, but you're used to balancing all these roles of writer, director, producer.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because I never went to school to do this. They say that you don't pick your passion picks you, and it's true. I was 10 years old, and I was lucky to find this passion. This passion finds me. But it was, so it was just a normal process. And people ask me like, how did you end up producing? How did you end up editing? And as you know, when you're starting so young, I remember I needed actors, or I needed costume, and I needed this, and I needed food, so I was just doing it. Mm-hmm. Because I needed it. So, it just became naturally. So I think for this one it was the same thing. I just called with all the experience I acquired and all the connection and network I had, and I called, the crew that I was able to afford, and just said, all right, now we're making a little longer one. Everybody jumped in. It was an unbelievable experience just to have this crew around me and just to say, all right, let's do this. In 13 days. That was, it's quite an experience.
Well, that's really, I think, inspiring to hear you say that. You didn't go to school, but it was all about passion and what you felt. So when did you first notice that passion for filmmaking was something that you could actually do something with in your life?
That's a really good question, actually, because I remember as a kid, maybe I was 13 or 14, and I remember between two explosions, I was making explosions with my friends, and because we needed this shot and blah, blah, blah. And I remember somebody told me, a little bit older, said, what you're doing every day, we call it director, and you could do this, do this of your life. And I remember just looking at the guy for half a second, like, all right, this guy's nuts. I didn't really, because I'm from 5 hours north of Montreal, and it's just not a reality. Still today, I'm an alien back home. I mean, people, just the way that I left, and I live in the U.S. and blah, 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 and they're just like, this guy's nuts. It's like nobody really do this. So I would say the first time I got to LA was 18 years old. And actually, it wasn't, because I left at 14 to learn English in Toronto, and then 16 in Vancouver, and 18 I got to LA for the summer. Mm-hmm. And it was just to learn English and play hockey. And then a friend of mine, the last weekend I was there, said, hey, do you want to check out what I do? And then, and I show him my short film and stuff, and really said, Matt, you got to stay here. That's the business here. And that's why I think I really realized that, I should maybe pursue this. But it's funny because when you do have a passion, the only thing you do is solving problems. And I still solve problems since I'm 10. So, you just, sometimes I should get a job. But, every day I just wake up and I just do it. So, and I'm just solving problems. And the problem sometimes gets bigger, but challenging. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's tough as hell once you decide to do this. But, there's nothing stronger than that passion that you have, It's the fuel, really. So, yeah, I think that's quite it.
That's interesting too, because it's this idea of invention coming out of necessity, right? You're learning on your feet, and it's also that leads to freedom when it comes to experimenting. And I think about that in terms of the Gracefield incident with the decision to have the iCam.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's a really interesting. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I got to say, that was solving a problem again, because I wrote the script, and that was not in the script initially at all. Mm-hmm. you know, and then when we did the budget in the first draft, I was like, oh, okay. And I knew what I was able, because I put the money together for this one as well with private investor and tax credit in Canada. So when we did the budget, me and my line producer, we looked at each other like, I'm going to have 13 days if I do want to have the crew to shoot this thing. And I'm like, there's no way if I start doing setup and green shot and this and that, I'm going to make this film. It's not going to happen. I mean, nobody shoots a film in 13 days. And that's why I was like, all right, I know I cannot break my camera. I know my DP will be behind me during the focus if I need to. You know, so I got to shoot this old school. And I was like, if I do this, then and that's where I start, you know, I'm like, okay, how can I do this differently? But again, it was just solving a problem. It wasn't my thought to do this at first. And that's where the found footage technique came in. Which I don't like the term because, you know, I think it's a marketing tool that was really great when the Blair Witch Project came out, and, you know, it worked really well, but then they used the term again and again and again when they saw, like, a camera angle, and I think the audience are just smart, and they're tired of hearing found footage because they're like, are you taking us for stupid? Because we know it's not a found footage. If you go see Cloverfield, you're watching a technique that they call found footage, which I think is the wrong term. But you know, Godzilla is not in New York. You know, so it was, and I was tired of the found footage as well. I mean, that's why I was trying to do something differently. I mean, it's just something different, and I hope it will translate to the audience. That's the goal here. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because the way the film is structured, I think there's going to be, you know, at first there's going to be that tendency to think, oh, okay, this is in conversation in some way with Blair Witch, but for someone who might be thinking that, in your own words, how is the film different, right? Like, what should they expect that will shatter that comparison with Blair Witch?
I think the emotion. I think the general emotion when you get out of the film, and I think that's what it's trying to do when you watch that kind of genre. I mean, of course, the first thing you want to do, you want to prep the hell out of the audience. You know, that's your target audience. That's what they expect. The same thing with your drama. They expect, you know, to have an emotion and cry. And so my goal was, all right, you know I have to scare the crap out of them, but again, I want to have them emoting. I want to have them to feel something when they get out. And that's why, you know, you saw the film, and that's why at the beginning I went a completely different direction than what you usually see, you know, in the genre film. So I was just like, try to do something else, try to make a little twist out of it. You know, you can't go too far because then you'll piss them off, but, you know, at least when they get out of the film, they'll be like, you know what, that was something different. You know, I think I really seen this. And look, there's two ways it's going to go. It's people's going to love it or people's going to hate it. And it's like everything else. And I think if more people like it, then look, I'll be really happy about it. That's for sure. Because I make movies for the audience. I make movies not self-indulgence here at all. You know, I'm not doing this for myself. I really do this to entertain people, and hopefully that's going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that was a really interesting move that you made in terms of grounding it and making, because there's a real emotional quality to this film that not a lot of other quote horror films have.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's why I think, that was exactly the goal. You know, I didn't want to go too far in that direction because then, you know, you piss them off, and that's why I didn't bring a lot of it. But, you know, that's what the beginning and, you know, the ending is surprising. You know, that's and a parallel story as well. You know, because you always see. I mean, that's between us. I don't know if we're on the radio or whatever right now, but I don't want to say too much.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's there's a parallel between, you know, the antagonist and the protagonist in the story. Mm-hmm. You know, really similar story, and that was important for me to have the audience understand that at the end. They're like, oh, okay, that's what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say too much.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that to bed right there and move forward, because I definitely think that it's going to be something that everyone will look forward to seeing. You know, another thing.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Another thing that I've heard people talk about with specifically with the horror genre is that it's used to kind of in a covert way, it can be used to make like political statements or social commentaries. Did you have any of that going on when you were writing the script?
No, not on that one. I gotta say, not on that one. I mean, there was a message of the general, the theme, of the film, the love and the loss, that, but nothing. There was no message whatsoever in that one. I would say. I mean, some people will see message that, to be honest, that I never thought of. That just I think comes naturally when you write, because you have your pre-assumption of thing and and your own thoughts of things. So that usually translates in your script, in your story you're telling. But I think for the next ones, for sure there will be some of them in there. But for this one, it was pure entertaining. Popcorn, have fun, and enjoy the ride movie, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And that's not to say too, I mean, you can definitely have entertainment and also it can be thought-provoking, right? Like there's not necessarily
definitely
one or the other. Right?
Oh yes. Oh yeah, no, for sure. And I think the next one will do. But this, I gotta say, I wrote this script really fast as well. 3 months, and I was done. So I came up with that story. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks because I was preparing something else, and financing fell apart. Big budget film, and then as a first time filmmaker, I just had to realize that nobody was going to give me $20 million to go shoot a first film, so I had to solving a problem again. I said, you know what, let's do a smaller one. So I didn't sleep for 2 weeks, and I came up with that breakdown of the Gracefield, and then 4 months later we're shooting. So it was fast. It was really fast into that process. But yeah, so I didn't. Like the next one that I'm doing, it's I've been working on it for 3 years, and it's a lot of draft, because a lot of people read it and notes, and and table read, and and go deeper, which I didn't have the chance to do with Gracefield, but I did it in the post production. Post production, that's why it took time, because I wanted to make it right. The test screening, and some something didn't work, and I changed and reshot, and it was important for me to make it right for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. So with all of the, problem solving, right? I mean, it can be overwhelming. So for young filmmakers who want to have a career, right, where they're in charge of their content, like you are, what advice would you give them in terms of how to approach problem solving in a way where it's digestible and also manageable?
Every problem has a solution. That's what my mom would say, and it's true. I think you have to go through steps. But I always say this, for a young filmmaker or anyone that has I'll be a little cheesy here, but has a dream, I think the most important thing, or have a passion like I do, you've got to believe in yourself. And the first thing, if you don't believe in yourself, then it's, you've got to work, you courage, perseverance, but you've got to believe in yourself, because as a filmmaker, you don't shoot every day. You don't do it every day. It's not like a professional athletes where you go train, and if it doesn't work, and you do it again the next day, and and that's not it for a filmmaker. It takes time to go shoot a film. So just solve those little problems one step at a time. And each day, if you go to bed and you feel that you move forward, then you got to go get there. And look, this film took 5 years to make, because I came to a problem that I wasn't able to solve in one day. And it took 6 months, and this, and so it's that's what independent filmmaking is all about, and that's what the reward is. So it feels so good when you get it done. That's what I would say. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear those kind of romantic ideas, and those ideas of being a self-made artist at a time when a lot of people feel like it's out of their hands. So that's really great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for listening, man.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And
sorry, we're just about time.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
sorry.
I was just gonna say, really, I wish you the best of luck with the film, and I'm excited for people to see it as well.
Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate it. If you got a chance, just let us know what your reader thinks, and looking forward to reading you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, man.
All right, thanks for your time. Yeah, thank you, man.
Have a great day.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Erica.
So how about that? Mathieu Ratthe, what a great guy. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you for opening up. I know I had a question at the end about what it takes to make it as an independent filmmaker, and Mathieu bared his soul, and I respect that. I really thank him, and I hope if you're out there and you're thinking about working on a creative project that you go out and just do it. So the Gracefield Incident, it's going to hit theaters, video on demand, and digital platforms, so iTunes, July 21st. And you can also follow Mathieu on Twitter. We'll have his information up on the blog post that goes along with this podcast. You can follow him on Instagram, and of course you can follow him on his Facebook page. So don't forget to check out the Gracefield Incident. And I think today, what are we going to do? How are we going to zone out? How are we going to end the podcast? I want to end today by thanking our good friend Jim for joining us to clear up any ambiguity about his existence. And I want to wish you happy trails. This is Chris. See you next time.